This might sound weird, but sitting in a hot bath after you finish your run could actually make you faster. I've been experimenting recently with heat training, not necessarily because I'm going to be racing in hot conditions, but because the science says that it can improve your performance even in cooler climates. So in this video, I'll break down how it works, how I've been using it, and also how you can use it to improve your running performance, especially if you keep accidentally choosing marathons that are really warm. So first and foremost, I think it's very important to start this video with a disclaimer. Please don't do anything that's going to cause you harm. I'm not going to be responsible for you passing out from heat exhaustion. This video is meant to educate and inspire, but you have to be smart about it, and that's down to you. Formalities aside, let's get into the actual video. So I'm going to talk you through the science of heat training and then what my exact heat training protocol was. But let's first talk about how we actually got here, specifically here. I started going on altitude training camps in 2019 and have since been on 6 altitude training camps, which has given me a very unique opportunity to train with a lot of professional athletes. And one thing that I've always half noticed and chosen to ignore is that a lot of them run in a lot more layers than they should. Here is a video of me running with Emil Carres in Spain in April. He got out his car in shorts and t-shirt and then put on a full tracksuit, and I can assure you that it was absolutely not tracksuit weather. I was sweating in my shorts and t-shirt, and after this run I couldn't really ignore the fact that a lot of fast people were wearing a lot of clothes when they ran. Fast forward a few weeks and I am still thinking about this, so I sent my coach this message, still secretly hoping that he would let me get away with just going for saunas. But unfortunately, unprompted, he replied to me saying that layered running also works, so I couldn't avoid it any longer, and the next day I started my heat training. But why does layered running actually work? Well, I read a couple of articles in preparation for this video, and I'm going to talk you through the main points that I found now. This article here says that when you heat train, your body adapts to sweating earlier to cool yourself down quicker, which means that when you take away those layers and just run in a race, for example, you're still able to sweat earlier, which means that you're staying cool for longer and your core body temperature isn't rising to the point where it's going to become a limiting factor in a hotter race. Now, this is something that does concern me a little bit when it comes to running marathons, because anyone who's been watching these videos for a long time will know that I've had a lot of issues with cramp in my marathons, and I found out in my most recent marathon where I didn't cramp that it was a salt issue. So I'm quite a heavy sweater. That sweat has a lot of salt in it, so if I don't have loads of salt, I will cramp. However, because this is something that I now know, like, I spent quite a few marathons thinking it was a muscle fatigue issue, but because I now know that it's a salt issue, I can just have a lot of salt and a lot of electrolyte tabs with salt in them. And actually, the heat benefits should still outweigh the fact that I'm maybe losing a little bit more salt in these marathons. And that's because of this next benefit that comes along with heat training, and that is increased blood plasma volume. So basically, heat training increases the volume of your blood plasma, which makes it easier for your heart to pump blood around your body, which of course is a good thing when it comes to running marathons, running 10Ks. And this isn't even related to running in hot weather. This is just for all kinds of weather. Even if I'm racing in Scotland, having higher blood volume is going to be great. And there's also some evidence that heat training can increase hemoglobin mass, which is essentially why people go to altitude. In my personal opinion, I think altitude does work a bit better for this. Heat training is great and I think it worked, but I think I get more out of altitude training. But let's move on to how I actually implemented heat training into my build up for my 10,000 metre PB, and Hopefully it can give you some ideas of how you can also use it to improve your PBs. So there are two types of heat training: active heat training and passive heat training. Let's start with active heat training. So this is basically anything that is done while you're out running. I started doing this on the 21st of May, which was basically the last hot day in Scotland. I wore tights and a long sleeve, and it was miserable. It was horrible. However, I managed to do the whole 10-mile run in this tights and long sleeve. I had convinced myself that I would only do half of it and then come home and change into more reasonable clothes. But actually just finished off the whole run, didn't really want to be soft about it. Got 10 miles done at 6:41s, which is my fastest easy run I've probably done at any point recently. I don't know why that is. If anyone wants to explain that to me, that would be great. But yeah, I then overdressed on every easy run from this first one on the 21st of May until the 7th of June, which was 19 easy runs in 18 days. What started out as tights and a long sleeve became tights, joggies, t-shirt, 2 long sleeves, a jumper, a jacket, a woolly hat and thick gloves. Partly because it went from being like 20 degrees in Scotland to being like 12, but also I found that just really quickly I was getting much better at heat training. Also, since it was so cold in Scotland, I did 2 layered runs on the treadmill, which kind of made me feel like I was doing work that nobody else was mad enough to do. And that's the bulk of what I did in my actual training. I completely avoided wearing any extra layers in sessions and long runs because I think it's more important to be fit than it is to be heat adapted. And having to drop out of a session because I wanted to wear tights and a long sleeve would have completely undone any of the potential benefits. If I'm being honest, this was all really annoying. If you're a big sweater like me, I'm sure that you can understand how disgusting everything was after my runs. But I had committed to it and I knew that I would have regrets if the 10,000 was hot or if I felt like I could have done more to maximise my performance. So I just done it. However, if I was to do it again, I would just buy a heat suit and rinse it out after every run. Next up is passive heat training, which is any heat training done outside of your running. This is the fun part, right? Well, no, it wasn't actually. The two things that I did for my passive heat training were that I took hot baths, which I did directly after my runs. I'd fill the bath up to the maximum temperature where it wouldn't burn me, and I'd sit in there with my whole body submerged, apart from my head, for 12 minutes. Why 12 minutes? Well, because I could convince myself that I would do 10 and then extend it a little bit to 12. And honestly, by the time I got to 12 minutes, I was done. This would leave me sweating and lethargic for a long time afterwards, and was probably my least favourite part of the heat training. So I wasn't as consistent with this as I was with all the other stuff, and I would guess that I probably had 6 to 8 of these hot baths after my layered runs. The other form of passive heat training that I used was the sauna. So I started taking saunas on the 28th of May, and I took a 20-minute sauna every day for 10 days in a row. Is this the best sauna protocol? Probably not, but it worked for me. It gave me a goal of doing 10 saunas 10 days in a row, and it was really quite time efficient. I didn't have to worry about coming out for 5 minutes and going back in. I could just do the 20 minutes 10 days in a row and it was done. The one thing that did surprise me about all of this is how much better I got at layered running from essentially day one, contrasted with the fact that I did not feel like I ever got better at taking saunas. That last 5 minutes always felt really tough in the sauna. So if this happens to you, don't worry about it. I still felt like it gave me really good benefits and worked for me, even though I never got better at saunas. And that's kind of that on heat training. There were a couple of more benefits listed online, but I didn't want this video to turn into a science class. So if you are interested in learning more about heat training, I'll drop some sources in the description. And all I want to say is that this stuff does work, but it shouldn't come before the training. That always has to be the priority. And also, you have to be sensible with it. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. As you can probably tell, I'm not an expert on any of this. I can only talk you through the protocol that I used before running 28:57 in the 10k and why it probably worked. I did feel like heat training deserved its own video on top of the improvements video that I made last week. One, because it's a pretty hot topic right now, and two, because I can't really say for certain if it played a major part in my improvement, to be honest. If you want to know what did help me improve though, you should definitely go and watch that video and subscribe on your way out. Cheers!